Everybody, Brian Good here is an update on Storm Talk. We'll get you through our storm chances the next few days, the holiday weekend, and we'll actually go into the first weekend of June as well. Before I begin, just as a note, all right, this is a blog discussion. You guys know, just like in the wintertime, I discuss the data in detail. If you want the nuts and bolts, simple forecast, is it going to rain or not, when, that is also found on the webpage, way3.com, on the weather page, and on our Way3 News weather app. It's on there as well. So if you want the simple idea there, this is a more detailed discussion. Apparently there's been some confusion lately on what to expect out of these blogs. I just want to make sure I'm clear now. A lot of you already know this, all right? So I'm preaching to the choir. All right, outlook today, marginal risk just west of Louisville. It's mainly instability based. There's not a lot of wind shear. In fact, you get all the way to Paducah to really pick up any kind of wind for anything that could sustain itself. So maybe some pulse type strong thunderstorms, but I think they'll be just outside of wave country, the way it's looking on the radar trends. For tomorrow, we'll discuss tomorrow. We're not outlooked for tomorrow. It's a enhanced risk in the plains, which SBC has just announced they may upgrade that to a moderate in some areas tomorrow. And then as we head into Friday, everything kind of resets itself more into the central plains, and we kind of relax a little bit here in Ohio Valley. All right, so the radar trends. We've had some showers and thunderstorms off to the west, as I mentioned. We've had some lightning and thunder out there, but yes, the dew point is higher along the 65 corridor in west compared to yesterday and previous days, but the amount of energy for a lot of this activity to sustain itself is really just not here. So look what happens. The rain is trying to move in, but it's really struggling. So there will be a chance that for those who west of 65 will get wet as we head toward this late afternoon. But if you're along and east of 65, other than a renegade pop-up, you're likely to be in good shape. Just a humid at times and gloomy outside the way it is beginning to look. All right, a couple of the short-range models that we're going to... Kevin's coming here making fun of me, Kevin. Can you tell I'm trying to do a storm talk over here?
Well, because we're going to start out with the short-range models. Brian likes to go through every model on Earth. So let's go through it.
And there's probably some not on Earth, but I haven't found those yet. All right, let's discuss the HRRR model. This is, by the way, a lot of the short-range models have done a horrible job on initializing how things are going and how things will progress. The HRRR model, I will say, and you'll see in the comparison in a second, has a better handle compared to others at the moment. It brings activity toward us. That's what happens. Fades it out. Maybe a renegade pop up along 65 late this afternoon, but most stuff will be fine. And I've said this many times before, the HRRR model on this particular look to it, a lot of times that green shaded area is a lot smaller than what is indicated. So this model can look really overpowering at times. All right, then later on this evening, again, a lot of that green will not exist, but where you see yellows, that is where your best chance will be for a spotty downpour. But here's what's interesting. 3 o'clock in the morning, new development pops in along 65. I say that's interesting because now let me show you the RPM model. Now look, how initialized. Not great. All right, it's really downplaying what's happening so far to our west. It doesn't bring much in here this evening as a result, but at 3 in the morning, it also shows an enhancement of some thunderstorms that could pop up in very scattered fashion during the 3-4 a.m. time frame. And then we get into a messy setup for Thursday, and I'm going to go into more detail on this, but there could be some downpours in the midday time period tomorrow. But the thing is, for tomorrow, there's going to be a few triggers to monitor. The problem is the models are very sensitive right now on where those triggers will develop and where they're going to go. That is crucial because that determines who's going to get a rough thunderstorm that could be gusty for about a 30-minute period to nothing but hazy sunshine and humid and dry. And that's kind of the setup we're going to face for tomorrow. The RPM does bring in a boundary that enhances some gusty thunderstorms in the Wabash Valley around 4 in the afternoon. It fades it out. But then it produces an outflow that re-enhances and rejuvenates this system again. It pulses back up across the Ohio River by 6 in the afternoon tomorrow, and then that will fade out as we head into the evening, and then maybe some more development on the morning time period, especially west of 65 on Friday. So what we have here, the setup, is the lack of wind aloft. Now, it is windy outside near the lower layers of the atmosphere. It's windy outside here in downtown right now. But you go up in the atmosphere, the winds are actually calmer in some cases compared to what we have at our level. And that's a problem for thunderstorm development. You really need to have the stronger winds on top to really have them sustain themselves. So by looking at this chart, this is the SHREF model, and this is looking at the wind shear. Black line is the average of all the different ideas that it has over the next several days. The threshold that I like to look at for severe weather to maintain itself, organized severe weather, is around 40 knots. That's up here. Look where the average is, way down here at the bottom. So you can see the problem is the thunderstorms don't have a lot of support from the atmosphere to help them out as far as keep them going. But on the flip side, instability is high for tomorrow especially. Cape's getting over 3, in some cases up to 4,000 in our area. Not as insane or as abrupt as we head into Friday and Saturday, but there's a lot of energy for the atmosphere to work with tomorrow. But there's not a lot of wind energy to keep anything going that does develop. It doesn't mean that something can still develop, though, and that is going to be the trigger that I'm referring to that can be very random. It could be an outflow boundary from a previous thunderstorm. It could be a complex of storms from, say, Chicago that drop in that could produce that trigger for our area. So it's one of those things where just a little bit of a push anywhere in our atmosphere can create some thunderstorms to develop, and they can become strong briefly. They likely won't stay strong for long. All right, this is not a situation where you've got severe thunderstorm warnings, say in our northern counties, and you've got warning, warning, warning all the way down into Adair County, north to south, and wipes the whole area. The wind energy is not there for that to happen, but you can get a couple that can pop up that can produce a warning, can produce some gusty winds and large hail, and then they're gone within the next 30-minute period. And that's kind of more the setup that we're going to be facing out of this. Now, I mentioned that 3 o'clock in the morning setup here for tonight. This is the reason why I think that is showing up on the HRRR model and the RPM, is there's a pocket of wind showing up here on the high-res NAM around 3 in the morning that is moving right along the Ohio River. It's not to that 40-knot level, but it's not far from it either, and I think it may be just enough. There's a potential there for it to be just enough to produce some thunderstorms around 3 in the morning in a very isolated fashion along I-65. So that's the reason why I think the models are picking up on that idea. But look what happens for the wind fields tomorrow afternoon. As I mentioned, nearly non-existent as far as any type of wind that's going to mess your hair up even aloft. The stronger winds, especially cabins went up and down. The higher winds, and then not that high, located across Indiana. You should see the look I'm getting right now. All right, but let's look at the sounding from the NAM model. And from the NAM model, it's given it marginal severe. And I agree when you look at the details on it. First off, it's hard to read all these numbers. The lifted index forecast is -10. That is high. I mean, the Cape's about 4,100 on the forecast here. So, yes, a lot of energy. But look at the wind shear estimated on the sounding. About 8 to 20 knots. And you can tell by looking at the wind barbs how quiet they are. So it's just not impressive on the wind field. It's the instability we got to watch for. And that's why the analogs that come up with the model, the soundings are saying, okay, well, usually when we have this kind of a setup, this much energy, there have been times in other cities where large hail has fallen. Well, that's going to be expected with a high instability type of a setup. So, again, I'm not really arguing for the idea this is a situation we need to be on guard for tomorrow. We just need to be weather aware in case we get a trigger, and we'll let you know. It's going to be a nowcasting event, it looks like. But I just want to make sure you guys know that if they do develop, they can become strong, and I want to make sure that everyone is at least aware of that potential. GFS, by the way, nearly identical. Same thing. Lifted index, -10. Capes over 3,000. And there's no cap, by the way, for tomorrow. So all you have to do is sneeze outside, and you'll probably be enough of a wind movement to create some thunderstorms to develop in the area. All right, now speaking toward the holiday weekend and Memorial Day, there are a couple of changes I want to note here. The Canadian and the Euro last night especially, are trying to build in that trough a little further to the west in the Great Lakes versus over Maine into Nova Scotia. As a result of that dip, a couple things. One, that would take the tropical wave that is forecast now at about 50% to develop into a tropical system this weekend and turn it up the I-95 corridor. This would prevent it from influencing our area. The downside is that little dip in the front here could enhance some thunderstorm activity in our northern counties for Memorial Day. It's a big if. We'll fine-tune that when we get closer. Looking at the Euro from last night, same deal. You can see that dip that happens. A lot of Cape here for Memorial Day, and it begins to pull that tropical system up and curve it out through the Carolinas there. So it's a recent change, and I think this is going to keep changing quite often the next few days. So don't adjust your plans by any stretch. The models do this typically when you're in a high-pressure dominant type of setup. There's a lot of problems with the models when it comes to the steering issues when these tropical systems pop up. I will say this, though. Every model shows a decent dip in the jet stream around the 4th of June that could bring some cool area. Now, the Canadian Euro a little quick on this, bringing around the 4th of June. GFS is slower, takes until about the 5th or the 6th. But maybe some break in the humidity at the very least. Even though we're just not getting into it, a break likely will be coming in about a week or so. All right, that's it for now, guys. We'll hash out all the details and have your final forecast today beginning at 5. See you on TV.